honestly, I think access to AI is going to help even out this curve we have of, super intelligent people versus like your average intelligence person, someone that's trying to accomplish a task, right? As long as you know the right questions to ask, then you will be able to go from where you are to where you want to be much quicker.
Welcome to the Pulse Collective podcast.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the Pulse Collective podcast, otherwise known as the PCP. I'm your host, Shruq Ansari. The PCP is the show where we bring on top business leaders, whether they're medical executives, estheticians, business leaders from every single space in the industry. And we like to uncover their journeys, lessons, and vision for the future of where the market is headed in. For those of you wondering, we are Pulse Marketing Collective. We partner with clinics, MedSpas, and wellness clinics all across the country to help multiply their revenue, unleash their business potential through AI-powered systems. If you're looking for proven ways to attract more clients, boost your client retention, and elevate customer experience, you're in the right place. DM us growth down below. One of our consultants will be in touch with you. Today, I am pumped to have a conversation, as joining me is David Sorensen. David has been in the game for quite a while, and I usually love to do introductions, but I'll leave it up to Dave to do a nice introduction of himself. He's not a MedSpa owner per se, but he actually works specifically on the equipment side and the supply chain distribution side, which is an amazing conversation that I think a lot of us will get some value from. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate the introduction. Yeah, I got into the industry about 8 years ago now, working for a company that sold pre-owned aesthetic devices. And so we were selling every brand name out there, from Hydrofacial to InMode to BTL to everybody. So I spent a lot of years kind of comparing the different devices together. But what else I experienced during that time is I heard all the problems from all the MedSpa owners calling in that had bought a device that was too expensive, that was, making them even consider things like bankruptcy because the price tag was so high and they just couldn't pay it off, let alone, make the monthly payments with the treatment. And it wasn't making them any money. So I dealt with a lot of problems that MedSpa owners face, primarily associated around equipment that is too expensive, without the support from the manufacturer that they needed to succeed. And a lot of times the manufacturer will offer them like a marketing package to help them like get launched and started and start paying off the device. And I saw so many of those fail that when I left that company, I decided to fix some of the things that I had seen in the industry. One thing that I noticed worked really well at my previous job was that aesthetic practitioners help each other. They're their own greatest asset. So if you can get connected into a network of other aesthetic professionals who have made the mistakes and learn from them and can shed that light so that you don't have to make the same mistake, that did work really well. So I took some components from the previous company that worked really well, combined them with some new ideas that I had, and now I offer extremely more affordable equipment with the same level of training and support that the manufacturers are currently providing.
I'm interested. So how do you really get into that? Because I know I have personal connections that have their own med spas and clinics as well, and they constantly struggle with that. Like, it's always that initial barrier to entry. It's a big barrier to entry for a lot of new entrepreneurs coming into the space. So typically you always get presented with, say, $100,000 laser machine, and now you have to finance it for X amount of time. But a lot of people don't have the incoming revenue to really support that. How are you managing that? You did mention you've gotten some tidbits from other people, but how's your approach different from what's already there?
Yeah, that makes sense. And the majority of my customers are new to the aesthetics industry, or they're converting from, like the ED to aesthetics. So we get a lot of dermatologists and plastic surgeons and things like that entering the space, as well as a lot of things like chiropractors from the other side that are joining the wellness clinic part of it. So there's a lot of people coming into aesthetics and and have that question, where do I get affordable equipment? Because right now, if you thought of laser manufacturers, some of the most expensive ones would come to mind. And so there's not a lot of options out there for more affordable equipment, but there's a lot of Facebook groups that are associated for med spa owners helping each other. Now, there's a lot of med spa groups that look like that as well, but they're just, a salesperson set it up or a sales rep set it up so that they could basically farm their own leads. But there are a few, and there's more coming out every day, aesthetic practice owner, Facebook groups. And that's a great place to get your questions answered and find support from people who have been through, whatever question you have about your business. You can get it answered there from someone who's been through it and has that experience and a willingness to share, just so that you don't have to go through the same headaches that they did.
Is that the name of the group, Aesthetic Practice Owner?
No, I don't know the name of any specific groups
Okay.
off the top of my head, but there's a lot of them on social media that you can join. And I definitely recommend getting linked up to somebody that you can trust that's in your peer.
No, for sure. I think even with us, when we were initially, we've kind of maneuvered away, even with my business, when it comes to med spas. We're also helping, just for some background too, for myself, I work in the IT space. I've been helping SaaS companies and I've been an ex-IBM consultant before. So we typically do something completely different. But with med spas specifically, it's unique, but at the same time, the IT space is similar where a lot of owners typically they talk a lot. There's a lot of conversation. And typically when you're making strategy, there's a lot of overlap in terms of what people are doing. I think one unique thing about the wellness space that's different though is where the industry is headed. It's at a completely different trajectory compared to a lot of other niches that we're seeing right now. I read a book where basically everybody talks about the importance of when you're picking a niche or an industry, talk about where it's going to be 10 years from now. And I think most people can agree the med spa and wellness like clinic in general, just that space is unmatched when it comes to the demand 10 years from now. So where do you actually see, based on where you, because you've been in the game for a while, a lot longer than most people that are going to be watching this, where do you see the industry headed in now? And how have you seen it progress even in the last 5 years since COVID, for example?
Yeah. So I think that the medical wellness space is going to take over a lot of the kind of traditional medicine space, where hospitals and, if you get sick or you're not feeling well and you go in to see a doctor and they're going to treat symptoms with pharmaceuticals. And aesthetics and this wellness is a space where it's not run by pharmaceutical companies. I mean, there are still prescriptions that can help people doing, going through tough challenges. But at the same time, with all of the research that we're doing into how the body works, how to, be and feel younger, all the GLP-1 compounds, all the different peptides and the stem cell research and the accessibility to products like exosomes are going to take care of a lot of the things that, people were seeking, treatment of symptoms in the past. I think we're going to get a lot further into, curing and preventing diseases. So I think that aesthetics is going to evolve the way that medicine should have without all the pharmaceutical companies, out there realizing how profitable it is to treat symptoms rather than curing diseases.
It's interesting. I'm actually hopping out with somebody right after this, and they have a pretty unique story. So if you're watching this, stay tuned. There's going to be an upcoming episode as well, where literally talks about the same thing, where a lot of people are more focused now on not really diagnosing the symptoms anymore. We've been fed by doctors for generations now to just give us medication, but now people are really starting to understand there's a root cause to everything. It could be skin conditions. It could be just you go to the doctor and they prescribe you a Tylenol or an Advil, but at its core, you have some type of deficiency. So people are going into more natural types of treatments when it comes to even just like vitamin therapies and things like that. Even on the med spa side, though, a lot of people are also looking into what I've noticed is non-invasive type of procedures, things that are more surface level. Is that something that you're seeing as well? And where do you see that trajectory kind of headed?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's new therapies coming out. One of my favorites is nebulized exosomes, where you actually just inhale basically the building blocks that your body needs in order to heal damage. And those exosomes will migrate to the damage because that's what they're designed to do, is find and repair tissue.
That's crazy.
And so, yes, I think that, and then there's a lot less restrictions than in traditional medicine with all the pharmaceutical companies. So it's the Wild West sometimes. There's a lot of gunslingers out there that are, making their fortunes, and a lot of, gold rush type people that are there to make the money. But the most interesting scientific advancements in medicine, I think, are happening in aesthetics and wellness and longevity now. changing from what it was of just being a beauty industry to truly being the fountain of youth, trying to cure longevity.
How are people managing the regulation perspective when it comes to that? Because somebody that's for like coming in, I could be like a patient walking into a spa. I don't know the practitioner, but I see them offering these types of things. I can inhale it. To me, that's foreign knowledge, like being able to do stuff like that. How does, from a regulatory standpoint, how is that thought process thing like changing now? Because of course the technology is innovating constantly, but I'm sure there's a lot of regulations that are kind of preventing things from happening. Is there something that you're also seeing that's holding people back from a regulatory standpoint?
Well, there is and there isn't. I think the biggest issue with the regulatory process is that it doesn't exist. Most things have been
Really?
built from, the, one medical board or the cosmetology board or things like that. It's kind of a new industry. So there's not this regulatory committee or company already in place, but they are being made as we speak. There are companies that are coming out that are testing the effective and quality of the exosomes and stem cells. And there's companies like MedSpa that are there to help protect doctors from liability. And they're constantly asking these questions. Where do we get educated? How do we know when we have enough education in order to perform a certain procedure safely on a patient, whether or not that particular procedure is FDA cleared or not for that specific indication? So the doctors are really, at the forefront of making these decisions of basically how much risk am I willing to take on in order to provide these treatments. And with a lot of the regulations, it basically just says from a state standpoint is if there's a medical director or a doctor overseeing a practice, it's basically up to their discretion on whether or not they have enough training in order to be able to do the procedure properly. There's not like a checklist where you have to go to this school or have this many hours of education. It's just kind of left up to the doctor because there's not a lot of places that offer that education even. There isn't, you can't go to college for, to be a laser tech to use, there's not, there's a lot of really good classes and educational facilities out there that will teach laser physics and how the energy is going to interact with the tissue and things like that, but you have to go out and find it right now. And that's, I think, the biggest is just there's not a lot of regulations. They're not very uniform across the United States, and there's not really any one major body that is creating these regulations or enforcing them for that matter.
It's interesting because in Canada, and I'm curious to know how it is in the States as well, but typically, of course, you have to be either an RN, an RPN, or an official medical doctor in order to carry forward any of these procedures. But we do have some form of, for example, an RN is not going to be able to just carry forward every single procedure that takes place at a spa. You have to have certain certifications in place as well. There's a full, I guess, a list of a couple things when it comes to specific procedures. So you're saying out there it's not like that? Like,
Yeah, totally different in like
really?
California versus like Montana. Yeah, in one state, an RN, you have to be an RN to use a laser. In the other state, you only need a cosmetology license or
Interesting.
less in some cases. Some cases you can microneedle with a cosmetology license and maybe a body art license, like a tattoo license, to help kind of bridge that gap between breaking the skin. So there's a lot of different ways that people can kind of get certain qualifications to do treatments, but it is different in every state. And so they are changing pretty regularly, so you kind of have to stay up to date with what your state's current guidelines are. Because if they shift, if you're an esthetician that has all these lasers and you're allowed to use them, and then all of a sudden the laws change and you have to be an RN, they can't run their business, until they go back to school for 2 or 4 more years. So it's not very structured. And that is, I think, the biggest issue is there's just not a lot of resources when it comes to regulation. And they are difficult to understand. Especially since these providers have so many different hats on, right? They're trying to run a business. They're also the medical provider.
Yep.
They're handling the social media. They're handling the marketing. They're handling the customer service. They're doing all of the inventory and the ordering and the finances. And so they're doing so many different jobs that it's hard for any one person at all to be amazing at all 7 different jobs that they have to be doing at any given time. And so, like you mentioned with IT, like it's really nice when there's a certain aspect or part of the business that they can just automate, especially with the new AI tools. You can automate something and it can do the work of somebody full time that's a professional at their job. So it's nice that there's some of these AI tools coming out to kind of help take the load off the business owners so that they can focus on the number one thing, which is patient care and safety.
You actually transition into the next topic that I wanted to really get into kind of seamlessly. So you made my transitional life a little easier on that. But I'm curious because my biggest point of interest right now is AI, AI, AI. That's all we hear from everyone, whether that's in the IT space, you could be a medical, you could be a mom and pop shop, you could be a restaurant in a strip plaza. Everybody's trying to incorporate this new thing, but nobody knows what it is. And and there's this constant sense of fear around it because med spas and estheticians and wellness clinics and they're not very different from the perspective of when you're true to your ways and you've been doing it and it's been proven and tried and tested for decades, you're not comfortable completely shifting the way that you've been working. IT and SaaS companies are the same way. You've had one way. People have been picking up the phone and cold calling their clients for sales teams for years now. Now people hear that, they hang up on you right away because they've gotten 100 of them already on the same day. So they're like, hey, that's not working anymore. How do I filter these old processes out? I'm curious when it comes to your business, how are you seeing AI? Are you viewing it as an opportunity? Because some people are seeing it as an opportunity, but some people are seeing it as this is displacing jobs. It's completely like overcoming like what they're comfortable with and they're really not trying to look into it. What's your perspective on it?
Honestly, I think access to AI is going to help even out this curve we have of, super intelligent people versus like your average intelligence person, someone that's trying to accomplish a task, right? As long as you know the right questions to ask, then you will be able to go from where you are to where you want to be much quicker. I mean, it just gives a roadmap for everything. So I think that this emergence of AI is giving the same opportunities to everybody who's willing to spend the time learning and utilizing the tools. I think AI right now is a lot like, apps were back in the early, 90s when the iPhone came out. All of a sudden we had an app that could make a certain task much easier, right? And apps didn't put people out of business. It changed some industries for sure. Some things, that was someone's whole job is now all of a sudden easy to do with just the tap of a button. And I think it's going to be the same thing with AI, apps and access to all of these tools that make difficult tasks more simple for us. It didn't slow anything down. Nobody complained about, an app taking their job or anything like that. And I think it's like that. It's just the ability to process information in a much better way. And now we're not restricted to just what the app can do. It can basically do whatever we want it to do. The medical providers who are using things like ChatGPT to look up symptoms and enhance their medical practice and get a different perspective on, things that they already know a lot about. If you know how to phrase the question, then you can increase the quality of the answer that you're getting as well. So I think that there's a big learning curve with things like AI as well. And if you know how to use them, you can really use it to enhance whatever knowledge and experience that you have and your ability to basically output work much better. But again, it's a tough thing that people are going to need to learn slowly. And they'll have to decide if it's worth, blocking out time of their day or week in order to learn moving forward. And there's a lot of people coming in with these half-built systems that are really hard to integrate with what you currently have. And so there's an abundance of ads for things like marketing and we'll bring you patients or you don't pay type things that really don't explain the process of like what this product actually is, what it can do and what it can't do. When I was first introduced to some of these AI tools, it was presented to me in a way that it can do everything, and it was kind of just plug and play. And what I found was that it's not. It has to integrate into each system that you have, and then it has to have its own basically code written out specific to you. And it's a lot more complicated than people kind of present it at first. So it's nice when you find the one that has that tried and true method, that they've got the success stories. It is easy to integrate. It's something that can be handled without any, without much of the provider actually orchestrating or managing, something that they don't even really understand to get an end result that they, aren't sure it can achieve or not. So I'm excited to kind of see it all come together, and the people that have successful AI tools, actually work and kind of create their own branding names for themselves so that the general populace can say, okay, this seems like a company that a lot of people trust. I'll just go with this one. Right now, there just seems to be too many contenders in the ring for people, even people like myself, to say, okay, this is the company I want to use to help me with my marketing and my ad spend, and basically booking appointments, whether that's consultations in the office or for me, people that are interested in buying equipment. So it's kind of chaotic right now, but it's very interesting to see, what the normal person is going to do with these amazing tools that we have. I think a lot of stuff is going to change, and I think it'll create more opportunity than jobs that it replaces, basically.
I completely agree. I might be a little biased because I've been in AI and data and AI and cybersecurity for like the better part of the last half decade. So I've seen kind of, especially since COVID, where it's gone. One thing you did touch on before we got into it, and I do want to dig into this a bit deeper, boys. When all these MedSpa owners, they have their hands in 7 different buckets. They're managing the appointment booking, they're managing the patient care, they're managing the post care, they're managing, like, if they have loyalty programs, like they have to put everything on their bucket, the social media marketing. The problem right now is that a lot of people are falling into this issue where now they're like, okay, I have to have my hand in 7 different buckets, but in reality, you really don't. And a lot of founders and owners, what I'm seeing right now is they're looking at AI as this one thing where, it's going to replace their receptionist. It's going to replace their staff. It's going to be like a one-stop shop. And the reality is, you touched on it, it doesn't. It's just meant to make our lives easier. It's not going to replace that human touch. At the end of the day, your salespeople, people buy from people. They're not buying from a robot. They're not buying from and I'm in sales. Like, I've done that for a majority of my life, and my job's not going anywhere. My profession is not going anywhere. Somebody's going to want to talk to me, not a random ChatGPT bot. But one thing you did mention is a lot of people are going and they're putting up, on ChatGPT, it's separating that distinguishment between an intelligent and, I guess, beginner level practitioner. But at the same time, people don't realize the risk associated with it, because now we're going on ChatGPT and we're putting patient information in. We're putting in like, this patient came into my clinic and I want to build a 6-month plan for them because they have this condition and this symptom. But in reality, they don't really realize on the back end where that information is really going. And there's legal sensitivity issues associated with that. So there's a really fun, I guess, like, comparison between, like, you want to use AI, but at the same time, you have to be intelligent about it. You can't just jump into a brand new stream. You brought up apps, the internet, smartphones. When they first came out, a lot of people were like, okay, I'm going to build an app for my business. Like, this is the thing I'm going to do. Now, a lot of people are coming with AI. You mentioned it. My Instagram, my social media pages are flooded with people that are like, I'm going to done for you service, $0. You're going to get everything. Like, you don't have to touch anything. And the reality is, I've been in that space for a while now, and it doesn't work like that. It doesn't. And you have to be transparent with people from the jump. You can't be like, you know what, we're going to get you 1,000 leads. And yeah, it sounds great. You're going to make $1 million and I'm going to pay you $5,000 a month to make that happen. Like, it sounds like a no brainer, but in reality, that's not the case. I was curious with one thing when it came to your business. You mentioned it, I believe, that for your website, you partnered with people to actually help build this lead generation system for you. What is your experience, and what can you shed some light partnering with people when it comes to somebody that's thinking about it, like a MedSpa owner that's thinking about doing these things? What are some things they need to look out for? Because from what I remember, you said it was a horrible experience that you had.
It was, yeah. I went through probably 7 or 8 different of these marketing companies. And the big red flag for most of them was that they didn't know much about the aesthetic space in general. And the aesthetic space doesn't operate like a lot of other businesses, not even dentist and hospital type stuff. So having someone with a background knowledge of how marketing is going to apply in aesthetics is really crucial. And that's why this partner that I found in North Carolina, Prime Regenerative, they do or Simple Growth Solutions is the name of the company. And the owner of the company has been in aesthetics for, the last 20 years. And his entire job was marketing, franchising, and basically starting med spas and then getting them functional and profitable as quick as possible. So getting them to pop up, use the tried and true methods, the marketing templates he has that he's been refining for years and years and years that he can just plug in to bring patients to the clinic. It turned out that same marketing worked well for bringing in business owners who are interested in equipment. And so that was my main thing, is take advice from a peer. Find someone who has a successful med spa business and ask them what tools they're using to run their automations, rather than just clicking. It's so easy to just click on a Facebook link, when you're up at 9 o'clock at night and you're going through Facebook or Instagram, and that ad pops up that, we'll send you, clients to your business. And you're like, okay, clients to my business. That's what I want. That's the end result that I'd like. So you click it, you book a call. Next thing you know, you're spending money, kind of have an understanding of what they're going to do or not do, but in the back of your mind, you just still see that ad. We're going to send customers to your business.
Yeah.
And so rather than just clicking on a fancy ad, dig a little bit, talk to, like I said, find a successful med spa owner and ask them what tools they're using, and they can help you kind of get through some really costly mistakes at the beginning that could have a really negative impact on your business. It sucks when you spend your last chunk, $10,000 on marketing thinking, okay, I'm finally ready to go. All I need is clients. You spend the money on marketing, all of a sudden you don't have any clients coming in, you don't have any more money to spend, and you're stuck at a dead standstill until you get past this roadblock.
Yeah.
Which is not always easy.
It's not optimal. And I do want to get into just how are you currently bringing in people? You mentioned that you're working with this like med spa owner who's built these scripts for you. A lot of people first of all, it's super valuable. So if you're listening to this, the one takeaway that we could give you is don't do a one size fits all, one-stop shop. You have to have people that have worked in the space or have connections in the space that are going to have knowledge about the industry that you're in. That goes across any industry that you're in. You could be in medical, you could be in IT, you could be in SaaS, you could be whatever. Like, just make sure that you have that. I completely agree with that 100%. I think when it comes to your specific, I think a lot of people are struggling with the client acquisition piece. So when it comes to actually generating these leads, are you falling back on funnels on your website? Are you falling back to like paid ads online? Like, how are you actually bringing people in right now?
Most success has come through Facebook marketing and Instagram marketing campaigns. When people are done with their day of work, they're spending times, primarily on social media. I think very few people are watching any type of television service with commercials anymore. So they're getting their content through streaming. And so if you can advertise on those platforms that they're actually spending their time on, I think that's the best. And, and it's tough not to click on an ad that seems like it's going to solve a problem when, you're just done with a hard day's work. You're looking for, tools to make your life easier, whether that's a supplement or a marketing service. You see that ad late at night when you're scrolling and you think, yeah, let's click on this and see what it is, and then we'll do a call or something tomorrow. So I think that's where a lot of people are making their purchasing decisions from, is just from what's in front of their faces.
It's a trap, honestly. I always say it's like there's so many people out there. It's hard to like I guess like vet out the bad cats with like the good ones and actually know where you're putting your money at. What I do want to get into now is, for your business, where do you see yourself now? And are you still on that growth trajectory? Or are you kind of like, this is where we're at 6 to 12 months from now? Where do you see yourself? What's your primary business goal that you've set for yourself? So
the same thing that I'm doing right now, just expanded. I'd love to be able to get more outreach and we'll be able to have conversations like this with more med spa owners. The fact of the matter is that most medical aesthetic practices, wellness clinics, and longevity practices, are being targeted by outside sales reps, where the sales rep comes into your office, shows you a device, and then puts a lot of pressure on you to buy it. There aren't a lot of companies that do this type of sales, like over the phone or online through emails and phone calls. And so just out of convenience, a lot of practitioners are just buying things that sales reps are bringing into their office, because doing the research on their own to compare devices, again, is just another task that they're already overwhelmed with everything that they have to do. if they can basically take this choice off the table of who's going to decide what equipment they buy and listen to the sales rep who's trying to sell them that equipment, then they save a lot of time and energy, but they also give up a lot of control over what the equipment is actually going to be able to do for them in the clinic. And so that's the risk. If I can expand my network enough that people are referring people to me by name, which is where 99% of my business already comes, just from people that I've helped that have told other people that I'm a good resource. Just expand that outreach again without making my overhead so high that I have to be the same price as all the other manufacturers by doing all this advertising and spending all the money in marketing, and having an army of sales reps coming into your office. I'd just like to kind of expand slowly and help people understand that there's other options out there. There's other better ways to do it. And I'm relying on the mistakes that have been made by the entire industry as a whole to kind of help push that. Anytime someone sees a solution to that problem, then they're going to be more likely to recommend that to a friend or a colleague.
No, for sure. For sure. And you touched on a couple of growth strategies that I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs are currently looking at. The reality is the warmest way you're going to get people in is through referrals and through word of mouth. I think the only issue with that is the scalability aspect of it, which is why you're now kind of alongside that running your paid ads. So you do need to have a multi-channel type of approach, which
That's
I think
true.
a lot of people should take away from this. I know we're hitting near the bottom. I do want to get into just really quick. You mentioned one thing about where you want to be 6 months from now. For a lot of businesses that have similar goals to you, what would you say is the one thing that's really holding you back? That's holding a lot of people back. Like if you had to, like you had a magic wand in your hand, you're a MedSpa owner, and you're like, you know what, this is where I want to be 12 months from now, but this is the issue that's holding me back from getting there. What's that one thing for you, or what do you think is that one thing for them?
That's a great question. So for me, it's making sure that every device that I sell, that I represent, is of the highest quality and has been tested in the United States. And the protocols have been written by aesthetic professionals who know the technology better than anybody else. And that's kind of a long process because it requires a lot of test patients and getting to know a system before you can really write, the perfect protocols for that system. And then, the training as well that goes with it, to how do we convey that knowledge to everyone who purchases the system so they know what it can do and what it can't do, and are intimate with the process. And so, like I said before, I'd love to see my business have, 15 fully vetted devices. And right now we probably have about 6 or 7, from like a microneedle pen to your general IPL diode hair removal systems, Q-switch tattoo removal, things like that. And as we're perfecting our erbiums and our thulium lasers, I'd love to see a full lineup of all the equipment that any med spa could ever need or want, available at a lower price than anybody else in the industry.
David, this has been honestly an amazing conversation. I think a lot of people are going to get value from this. I feel like everybody's fighting the same fight, whatever industry you're in, we're all on the same side, where you have to navigate the changing industry, and a lot of things are changing right now when it comes to technology. I'm seeing it literally just with the clients that I even work with. It's not one size fits all. Like every single person has a completely different plan. So you can have one person where it's like, you know what, we'll run paid ads for you, but now this particular individual needs an actual funnel on their website. You need a chatbot on your website. You need somebody that's more customer service centric, and you need people that are going to be getting their questions answered right away, as opposed to like an outbound type of system. I think everybody needs their own unique approach, and you touched that. Like you hit the nail on the head when it comes to that. Is you can't have a one size fits all shop. And a lot of people are doing that nowadays, which is unfortunate. You're selling basically like a lead acquisition system or a lead nurturing system or a client follow-up system where it just doesn't work for everyone. So if you're listening to this, it's super valuable. Key takeaway from that. Just to wrap up, Dave, I think will be great is if you can just tell people where they can find you, your public social media pages. If you have a website, let them know where they can find you on that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Got a website. It's regentechrevolution.com. You can find us on primarily Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, where we post videos and content. And, we've got groups to help kind of connect people with other aesthetic professionals, peers. If you need a medical director, we have all those types of resources out there. But yeah, primarily just look up Regentech Revolution or Regentech Revolution on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Hey, thanks so much. It was great to meet you.
Awesome. Take care.
Bye.